Today, I want to do a comparison between two different business models. First one being franchises, and the second one being a financial agency. The financial world, that is where I live. And so that's what I want to compare it to so you can see what we have to offer. I know a lot of people look at franchises as a great type of business to get into for a number of reasons that I think are very fair, but I just want to show you how they stack up together, especially if you're looking at getting into business for yourself. So what I'm going to start by looking at is what I call franchise heavyweights. So these are ones that are recognizable to everybody. The first one I'm looking at is basically a coffee and donut place that we all know of here in Canada that we're very familiar with, as well as a fast food franchise that does burger, fries, etc. And both of those operations have been up and running for decades. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to look at what I call the tail of the tape, kind of a boxing analogy, and just kind of show the difference between the two. So when we look at the franchise fee, what this really is your cost for getting in. In a way, you could almost consider it like an application fee where, just because you put up this money doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the franchise, but it is basically to get your foot in the door. So as you can see here, for the first one, it's 50,000. For the second one, it's 45,000. So not a lot of difference there, but it's a pretty big chunk of change just to put up to see if you can get in the door. So probably more important than that then would be the total investment. So the total investment, that's going to include things like the building, that could be the land, it could be all the equipment. There's a number of things that go into it that cost a lot of money, especially nowadays. So when you look at that, your total investment to get in is obviously between the two. Again, it's pretty amazing how close they are to the same, but you're talking about $1 to $2 million before you're going to be up and running. And that's in most cases, that's if you're going to have a standard shop, just an average shop. It's not talking about a kiosk or anything like that. So the next one we look at is liquid cash. So these larger franchises, they don't look at this and say, hey, just go borrow all the money. If you could happen to qualify for borrowing that kind of money in the first place, they actually want to ensure that you don't borrow all the money. So a few of these, they actually want to look at your financial statements and actually see what your net worth is. And most of them do have a limit on that. Sometimes it's $1.5 million, something like that. But they also want to see liquid cash, unencumbered cash, they call it. So here you're looking at $500,000. For the other one, it's about $700,000 if you're opening up with them in Canada. So obviously for a lot of people, when you look at these numbers that we're talking about, how many people have that kind of money, that kind of net worth when they're looking at going into business? For some, this would be much, much more than their life savings. They don't have that much liquid cash. So again, when we look at these long-term proven franchises that have a proven system where you are going to make money, although sometimes it's not as much money as people think. When you look at this, who is this really available to? It's going to be the wealthy that can get into these things, and probably not too many other people. So that creates a huge challenge for people that think they want to get into these sorts of operations. The other thing to look at is they all have ongoing fees. So what is that? Well, usually what we're looking at here is a percentage right off the top of your gross sales. So for the one here, it's minimum 10%. The other one's minimum 8%. And of course, these are subject to change. Well, what's included in that? Well, sometimes they call it a service fee. Some of them call it a royalty fee, makes up part of that in the neighborhood of probably 4 to 6%. And then there's a lot that goes towards the advertising and promotion where you contribute to the larger bucket of all the franchises across the country to pitch in for the massive advertising they do. So that's usually in the range of 5 to 6%. That's coming right off the top. And then it depends on which franchise, but some they're charging a percentage. If they own the buildings, they're charging a percentage. Some of the other ones, they look and say, well, you're going to be paying your own rent or lease from month to month, but that can be included in there. And of course, that's all subject to change. Another thing that might be included in there is something called research and development, where they're actually testing new products, new donuts, new whatever to, have new products coming out all the time to keep people coming back and checking things out. So I know for one of these, they estimate that what the franchise owner is actually going to make from this is in the neighborhood of about $180,000, but that's actually before any interest expenses they may pay, any taxes if they actually own the property for property taxes, etc. So there's a lot of things that are kind of built into this as well. So really, when we get to the end of this, and if we want to declare a winner, well, it's hard to say. It might come down to preference, whether you like one or the other a little bit better. They're probably going to make the same type of money in the end. But your biggest challenge is probably going to be coming up with the resources to even qualify. And if you're in a position where you have these kinds of dollars on hand, you have to look at it and say, is what you're actually going to be pulling out of there after you give up such a huge percentage right off the top, which also, by the way, I didn't mention, those ongoing fees don't include paying your employees. That's another expense. But you'd have to decide and really run the numbers and figure out if you're pulling out enough based on the huge capital investment and what you can expect to pull out of there from year to year. So the next one we're going to look at is what I call franchise flyweights. And where that comes from really is that because of the huge cost involved with the heavyweights, a lot of people look at kind of looking at a lesser investment. They still want a system, but they know they can't afford some of the big ones. So the ones we're looking at here, the first one is actually kind of connected to the pizza industry. When I looked into this one, I'd never heard of it before. It kind of has a unique idea, but yeah, I had never heard of it before. And the one we're going to compare it to is more of a healthy food franchise, which again is one that I had never heard of before. And that's often what happens when you start looking at the flyweights. People look for something which is a good idea, maybe something that they like, and it's a lot cheaper of investment. So again, we're going to look at the tail of the tape and kind of just compare the two. So if we look at the franchise fee for the two of these, they're pretty close. The first one here is $25,000. The second one comes in at $35,000. So when you first look at that, you might say, well, that's actually not that much cheaper than the big boys, and you're right. And so a person is still going to be shelling out for that, but that's still kind of that first fee is probably manageable. The key point here on these ones, the key difference is going to be the total investment. Because now when we look at this, well, now you're looking at a range of, for the first one, it's about 240 to 280,000. It's going to be that investment to be up and running. And for the other one, pretty big range of anywhere from 150 to 400,000. Well, the key point here is that that's a lot cheaper than the big boys. And so somebody might look at this and say, hey, you know what? I've got a certain amount saved. Like maybe I can pay for half of it with my savings and the rest I can probably borrow. And so that's what a lot of people end up doing. But what ends up happening now is that they're putting their life savings on the line. So they really, really need this to work out. And if it doesn't work out, they might be 10, 15 years further down the line, starting over again from scratch. And, that's what we see happen to a lot of people. I know somebody personally, actually a client of mine, that they did something similar to this. They had the right mindset. Hey, you need to be an entrepreneur. You need to run your own show, or you're going to be in the corporate rat race forever. And that's what they did. But, more than anything, they just kind of ran into some bad luck because things became slow, and then they had problems paying the employees and things like that. And, through no fault of their own, but they just had a franchise that was on the cusp. It just wasn't well established enough yet to deliver what they needed it to deliver. So, someone kind of gets caught in that middle, and it's, you hope it's going to work out, but you don't necessarily know if it's going to. And that's probably the scary part in something like this, is it's still a lot of money for most people to be putting on the line. So with these ones, they don't necessarily look at and say you need a certain amount of liquid cash. So the thing that I looked at here was to see when they were established. So the one here on the left, the pizza one, it was actually started in 2013, but they didn't start franchising until 2017. And they have grown fairly quickly, but they are still a very new company. Okay, so that can be something that maybe makes somebody a little bit nervous, but maybe they're the ones that are getting a straight shot to the top. The other one's actually been around since 2001. So I would look at that and say, maybe they've been a little bit more of a slow build, but maybe that's the right way to do it too, where you just kind of keep growing over time. So that may or may not play into a person's decision on whether they want to go with one of these two. The next one here is the ongoing fees. And so they were a little bit different. So the one on the right here, very similar to the other ones where they look at a percentage of everything for gross sales. Again, same idea, royalty, advertising, those sorts of things, going to be a minimum of 7% for that one. And for the other one, for the pizza related one, it actually works out to about $1,200 per month. And really how they kind of come to that number is that in the first year, they actually charge less than that. And it's just a way to help people get more established. And then they just kind of charge a flat fee from there, which is, basically made up of some of it's for advertising, about $200 of that's for advertising, and 1,000 is just a flat fee that goes to the parent company. So I found that interesting where, as you grow your company, if you start having more people go through the door, there's a limit to what you're going to pay. So that definitely could be appealing as well for somebody who's looking at this and doesn't want to pay a percentage of everything to the bigger company. Okay, so when we look at this one and try and declare a winner here. So again, this one's a little bit tougher because they're not as established. So I look at this and say, well, maybe the one that's been around for 20 years is the way to go because they've proven they can stick around. Whereas I look at the other one, I got to admit, when I looked at it, it's a very unique idea to a very crowded pizza industry. But I thought, geez, that's a really great idea. So again, this is sometimes can be a bit of a crapshoot where people are putting their life savings on the line and they don't know if it's going to work out. But there is something to be said for becoming an entrepreneur and running your own show. Just understand that it's still going to be risky either way. So now I'm going to transition to talking about how a financial agency like ours works. And I am a little bit biased, but I think this does beat the franchises hands down for a few different reasons. And I'm going to spend some time going through that. So with us, actually, the initial investment, believe it or not, is only $600, which I think sometimes I wish it was more than that so people would take it a little bit more seriously, like they do with a franchise. But really, that initial investment is to get your licensing and certifications in place. And the nice thing about that is, you take that with you wherever you go if you stay within our industry. And probably on top of that, nowadays, you probably need a laptop, but I think everybody has one of those already because you can pretty much do this business from anywhere. So, number two, here we have some ongoing fees to consider. And for a person starting out with us, that they start building their agency from day one, it's going to work out to about $150 per month. Now, part of that is to have access to our office. We have a roughly 15,000 square foot facility, and we have amazing training rooms. We have meeting rooms so people can book those to meet with clients. We have different working areas where if people don't want an office within the office, they can come work at a workstation, plug their laptop in, work for a couple of hours, come and go as they see fit. That covers photocopies, that covers couriers for paperwork, you name it, a lot of different things. Also in that is things like our liability insurance is included in that. And which, by the way, this fee, if you were to help the equivalent of one family a month, you actually get half of that back in your pocket every single month. The third item here is we essentially give 16% off the top from every transaction goes to our back office, which looks like a lot to begin with, but just to give you an idea what some of that covers, and I love this because it covers a lot. It covers a lot of our advertising and promotion. So we're very big in the curling community here in Canada. We advertise all over that. We've had golfers on the PGA Tour. We've sponsored NASCAR. We just do a ton of things like that to help grow the WFG brand. Also is that will cover like our legal. So if you're going to get hot water for whatever reason, we've got a company backing us, a large company by the name of Aegon. uh, who are worth billions of dollars, and they also do the contract negotiation. So you're going to see here, this is just a handful of companies we deal with. We market products for probably 80 different companies in the industry. You recognize the few that I'm listing here, but a lot of these companies have been around for 50, 75, some over 100 years. So we are borrowing their credibility. They're the products that we're using to get in place to help the families we deal with. We have a number of tech tools. We have something called Campaign Manager, which is automated for sending items out to clients, potential clients. We have something called Salesforce, so anybody who's in sales will know everything that that does. It also goes into helping us with ongoing training and education, and now with leveraging technology that is constantly on the go. We have a number of Zoom trainings every week on an office level, on a nationwide level, a lot of different things to plug into and learn, even training sessions from the founders of our company. The next item here is payroll services. This is a huge one. So as I grow my company, if I have 100 licensed individuals working within my organization, I don't have to worry about doing any of the payroll, right? That's taken care of by our back office. So I don't have to worry about that. That is not the case in a franchise setting. The next one here is our business format system, which it's amazing. I'm listing it down here. That's basically just like a franchise. It's like just follow this book. You do everything that it teaches you, and you're going to have a successful business. On our online advisor back office website, we have a number of tracking tools, so you can track your business and look at the metrics and figure out, where is it that you need to spend time on and working and developing. And so these are just a few of the items that I'm just scratching the surface here. That doesn't even cover everything. But when you look at that 16%, I actually consider that a bargain. At first glance, you might look at that and say, okay, well, that's more than what some of the franchises are charging. But I'm also going to show you how this works going forward. And, as you see a little bit more about how our compensation works, you'll understand why that is a bargain. And I think kind of the first item in regards to that is that I'm not paying an initial investment over and over again. If I own a franchise like a McDonald's and I spend that $1 to $2 million to get it up and running, every time I want to open up a new outlet, that's another $1 to $2 million. Here, I never pay that kind of fee again and again. I can grow my agency and I don't pay any more than a certain percentage every single month. So again, to show you what this looks like, and for some of you that have watched some of the previous videos, you'll probably recognize this slide. But this shows somebody who's running an agency. The SMD is a person kind of overseeing this agency, and it shows 6 other licensed individuals working with that senior marketing director. Now, when you look at these numbers, just understand that that 16% we already talked about, that's already been removed from the equation when we get to this slide. So here's a small agency that is helping 10 to 12 families per month. And for that senior marketing director, it's generating essentially right on the nose $200,000 per year. So when we look at this, when you look at the overhead for the senior marketing director, it's not a lot. Usually when you become a senior marketing director, by the time you reach that stage, you're making 6 figures. That's pretty much a general rule right across the company. And so your expenses will go up slightly. Before, when you were paying about $150 per month as a senior marketing director, that's going to go to about $1,000 per month just with what you have to oversee and your responsibility in the office. But when you're already making 6 figures, you've kind of already gotten to the point where you don't have to worry about that. You have a proven business that's already generating income, or you wouldn't have that little bit of an additional expense. Now, as you can see here, we say at the bottom, promoting 2 senior marketing directors. So again, everybody that you bring in has the same ability to grow and build an agency, and you can help them get to that level. You actually have incentives to do that, because then they can spin out, be separate and independent from you, and you'll still get a 12% bonus on what they do. So if you've taught them to do what we call 50,000 points of production on a monthly basis, they're going to go on and build a business that does the same thing. So for you, if you have 2 people doing that, it's 100,000 points times 12%. That's another 12,000 per month. You add this all up, And this senior marketing director is making about $350,000 per year. Overhead, about $1,000 to just over $1,000 per month. Now, the interesting thing again here is that essentially what this person has done is they've created a few different outlets. You could look at it and say every license is an outlet, but also every agency owner, so every senior marketing director that they help produce becomes another outlet. And for this senior marketing director, they didn't have to pay another $1 to $2 million to get that other office or outlet up and running. So again, you pay that $600 up front to get up and running, a little bit of ongoing costs, and then from there, you can scale it without a lot of money out of your pocket and start to grow a multiple six-figure income. So again, if we kind of compare it to earlier where we talked about with some of these franchises, even with all that big capital expense, they're lucky if they're bringing in $180,000 a year. And here we just showed how to, on about $1,000 a month, expense-wise, create a business that is generating, twice that. Okay. So here's another slide that was in one of our earlier presentations as well. And this really talks, I think, to the scalability. So, if you look at it, do you think you could find, train, and develop 5 to 7 motivated, business-minded people over the course of your career? And really the focus here would be to say, let's say you find one person and they build a little agency of, 5 people, each helping a family per month. That's where the 5 times 3,000 points comes from. Based on what they're generating, that can create for you about $3,000 per month for every little, I guess, pocket of agency you can find like that. So find one really good person that also wants to grow an agency and help them train and develop those people. The scalability comes in how do you double your income? Just keep finding more people. So again, here it's actually 6 times. Because if you could find 6 sharp people like that who want to build something, and they go out and they build a little agency that's helping 5 families a month, find 6 people like that, that generates about $18,000 per month for you. And at that point, if you've created independent people, you're not having to put in a bunch of time either. So really when we look at it then is, who is this opportunity available to? It starts to become available to everybody because who has $600 to get up and running and $150 a month for expenses? Pretty much everybody. It's a lot different than trying to come up with $250,000 to get into business. And you may look at it and say, well, I know some really sharp individuals and I'd love to get into business with them. But if you were looking at a traditional business or a franchise model, those people may be interested in getting into business, but they don't have $250,000 to get into business with you. So this is a way you can create multiple outlets and really scale the business over a period of time and not need $1 to $2 million every time that you want to do it. Okay, I want to look at this from one last angle and just kind of give you the overall view. And here we're talking about building multiple outlets. So if you're the person overseeing that agency, you're the senior marketing director, and anything you do, you're going to get paid 66% on. So then if you had, 2 marketing directors, and keep in mind that each one of these marketing directors has the option, if they want, to build an agency within your agency. But essentially, based on their contract, if there's 2 of them, plus you get a 15% spread or override on each of them. So on a monthly basis, that is generating another 30%. Then if you had 2 associates, again, they have the option if they want to be building an agency within your agency. But if there's 2 of them, now you have a 30% override on them, which would come to 60% per month. 2 training associates, same idea. They have the same option. There's 2 of them, but at the time being, you've got 40% override on them, so that's 80%. And then if you've gone out and you've helped promote those 2, what we call first generation senior marketing directors. So these are people now that have grown their agency to a certain point. They can be completely independent of you if they want to be. So if there's two of them, you still get a 12% bonus on them, which is 24% essentially on a monthly basis. And so if you add that all up, it comes to 260%. So, before when we were talking about, you're giving away 16% to the larger company, and that's all you ever give up. If you build an agency and build it properly, you're going to build multiples of that. So if we look at it, at each little agency within your agency, they're all going to help minimum of two families per month. And when we look at helping a family, that usually generates a minimum of about 3,000 points. And I want you to understand that to only be helping two families out of each one of those little agencies, that's very, very conservative. Okay, so that's 6,000 points per month. Your share of that is 260% of that. It's 15,600 per month. Okay, so not bad. And you're building independent people here. And so the nice thing about it is you can scale this to whatever you want it to be. So you can grow the size plus the number of outlets. So within each one of those little agencies, you can be helping them train and develop new agents, new licensed individuals that can go out and help a family. You can be hiring people directly to you, so you're growing the number of people that are directly to you. Number of outlets, you can be helping multiple people become a first generation senior marketing director. There's even levels down below that as well, which we're keeping it simple here, but it's even better when those people start developing people. What I want you to understand with all of this is you can be growing this to a huge number. So all we've really shared with you here essentially is, 2 times 4, 8 separate little agencies that are growing underneath your umbrella, right? You can grow that to as big as you want, right? That can be 20, and there can be 10 licenses within each one. There could be 200 different licensed individuals working out of your organization. But the key point here is the cost does not increase. That roughly $1,000 a month that you would now be paying as a senior marketing director, that doesn't go up. Now, you might get to a point where you have way too many people working out of an office. You may have to go and lease space somewhere else. But, as an example, in our office, there was a group that spun out and started up a new office, but kind of the top guy that kind of spearheaded that, he was basically making 7 figures at that point. So at that point, the cost isn't really an issue. And again, when we go back to for the brand new licenses that are paying $150 per month, 75 of that is going towards helping sustain an office. So you're not footing that bill entirely by yourself. Everyone's chipping in a tiny bit. So that's important, is that you can scale this thing and your expenses are not going to increase dramatically. And the nice thing is, as you grow this, you're not relying on just one outlet. So, if one outlet is their production is down in one given month, it always seems like there's another outlet that's having a really great month and makes up for it. It's not like a store or a franchise where you can only really afford to have one location. If people aren't coming in the door or things slow down in that part of town, then your numbers are going to be dramatically affected. That's not the case here. You can diversify and have as many storefronts, if you want to call it that, as many outlets as you want. And people that are going out there as independent people that have the same opportunity, they're extremely motivated to go out there and build something for themselves as well. So it's a way to grow an amazing business, and it's something that can buy you your life back as opposed to just consume your life. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, when we're talking about getting total lifestyle freedom, I think that's what we're all looking for. It's not just money freedom, it's not just time freedom, it's the ability to have both at the same time. So hopefully that helps, but I'm happy to set up a time and meet and just kind of dig into this and get all your questions answered.